to episode 29 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answer to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Before we move on, let's award the much vaunted Expertise is Overrated Tinfoil Award.
So, as a reminder, this is usually an award that we give out at the start of each episode to the person who had the most ridiculous point in last week's episode. However...
Yeah, usually an award, I like that.
Yeah, that's what we call ad-libbing in the industry. But we had a bit of a chat about this just before coming on air, and I think we owe our listeners something of an apology.
Very much so.
Because our tinfoil has gone quite downhill in recent years, and we've been scrabbling around at the start of episodes to come up with something to award it for. And really, that's not doing anyone any good. You know, it's not providing the listeners with the content they're after. And also,
I just know that we're going to get told that this is going to be our biggest tinfoil yet, because we will have undoubtedly said really stupid things last week.
I don't doubt it. But nothing. The problem is when we were first doing this, we said stupid things that stood out.
Yeah, it's true.
Whereas now, I said things. I said stupid things that stood out. I don't know if what's actually happened is everything we say is just utterly stupid now.
It's either that we can't recognise it anymore, or you've got some sort of newfound maturity. That doesn't seem likely, does it?
Doesn't seem likely.
No.
I mean, on the one hand, you know, do have the baby that we've got to look at, that I've got to look after. Well, my wife is doing most of it, because she's amazing.
Yeah, don't get confused in that I'm involved in any of this.
Yeah, that's what I was trying really hard to... That's why I said I rather than we, because...
I'm more of an obstacle, if anything.
Yeah, but then I didn't want... I don't think she listens to this much, but I didn't want her to come across an episode of me claiming that I was doing the majority.
Yeah, the sole caregiver.
that would be bad. So what we've decided, moving swiftly past that, is that this week we're not going to award a tinfoil, but what we are going to try and do going forward is just say some more outlandishly stupid stuff and give you, our listeners, what you're looking for, essentially.
Well, I'm hoping that today's episode will provide some gold. I think last time it was just... Yeah, I don't know, we were surprisingly down to earth. I think
the problem is we were talking about something that we both know quite a lot about and kind of generally agree on.
Yeah, it's like Expertise is Overrated applied some expertise, which is just
we shouldn't have done
weird.
That.
We really shouldn't have done that.
We should have had a guest on or something. Anyway,
that's true. Instant tinfoil. Yes, anyway. Let's move on. We'll promise to just say stupid things, which, you know, usually not a problem. Anyway,
and we can absolutely guarantee that even if it's not in this episode, by God, is it coming in the one after?
Absolutely. So what has been positive, I think, is our Discord has, well, I won't go as far as saying blown up.
Comparatively.
There's been some really good discussion these past few weeks.
There has. It seems we have a couple of new loyal listeners, so welcome. But they also joined the Discord, which is great, and just sort of gave us running feedback on every single one of our episodes, which was amazing. Impressive.
Worrying.
Slightly overwhelming as well, because I think they operate on a slightly different time zone from us. So I would just wake up one morning and check Discord over breakfast or whatever, and there'd just be 3 pages of discussion.
Yeah, I distinctly remember the other day going on Discord and going, nope, need my coffee first.
Yes, but no, so obviously welcome to them both. And just one point that I thought I would pull out of the discussion was in relation to our episode ranking the Star Wars duels, our favourite duels from the Star Wars saga. Nitsua writes, I'd contend Hayden Christensen in the duel on Mustafar doesn't scream like someone who's been told to scream, which was my assertion. But instead he screams like a 5-year-old who's not getting their way. It's pitch perfect. Check back in 4 years, Sean, and tell me I'm wrong. I dare you. I just don't like that call out at the end.
I do.
It really worries me.
I do, because it bodes well for your future.
Mhm.
You'll have a mini Hayden Christensen in the house.
Oh. Does that mean I've got Jake Lloyd?
Oh, no. Oh, let's hope not. No, but that was a great comment. There was a lot of really good discussion on Star Wars.
Yes.
One of our favorite things to argue about, one of the easiest things on which give me a win. Also, Harry Potter. Very long discussion about Harry Potter.
Harry Potter made a resurgence. That was actually Otter trying to get us to watch a 2-hour-long YouTube video on Harry Potter, which we both refused to do. So he gave us a TLDR, which I think you as well, just took exception to. And he kept saying, "Go and actually watch the video. I'm not giving you a good TLDR," but we just shouted at him instead, which was quite fun.
It is what we do. So keep it coming.
Yes, excellent. But moving on after 5 minutes of rambling, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're back into one of our comfort zones and a scene of frequent nonsense.
Excellent.
The Harry Dresden universe.
Ah, yes, of course. We're talking Demonreach, aren't we?
We are talking Demonreach. Particularly, I think the main crux of this episode will be who the Englishman on Demonreach is. But I think before we get there, we should probably give a little bit of context.
I think that's wise, because if the only thing we're talking about is who is the British man in Demonreach, there's just an objectively correct answer. So
it's Merlin. So let's move on.
Okay, so
tell me that you agree with that.
I don't agree with that for many reasons. But
I really thought we'd get together here for 15 minutes, just quickly say, "Oh yeah, obviously this is who it is," and then we move on with our lives. But no, sounds like we're in it for the long haul yet again.
Settle in,
settle in, listeners.
But before we have that fight, I think you're right. I think we should set the scene somewhat. So that it is a conversation that people can follow, even if they're not as neck deep in the Dresden verses you or I happen to be. So, Demonreach is a prison?
It's actually a very complicated question, isn't it?
It's an island. At the highest level, before we dive into why it's a complicated question, it's an island in the middle of Lake Michigan that appears to be a prison for nasty supernatural creatures.
Yes. I mean, that's about as succinctly as you can put it. So it's an island that seems to evade detection.
Yes.
It keeps people away actively, it seems. Great source of magical power as well.
Yes. I was going to say, if it doesn't actively keep passers-by away, it has such a strong passive aura as makes no difference.
Yeah. Although there are signs of habitation on it, which it always interested me.
Yes.
I couldn't quite figure out what that means.
I think we're told that people tried to settle it during sort of the Great Move West in the US, and the island basically drove them away.
Yeah, but in such a way that they never plotted it on any maps either.
Yeah, very true.
Which, yeah, it's all very fascinating. So, and so obviously, I think one of the key points here is that there's some kind of sentience, right?
There's something funny going on. There is. It has a genius locus.
Yes.
So essentially a guardian spirit that watches over the island. But it seems to be more than just that, I think.
I would agree with you, but this is where we're already getting quite metaphysical, because it's not so much a guardian spirit as in it is the island, it is the prison. It is the
Yeah,
power that's there.
that's true.
And it's hard to separate those things. And I'm not sure you can unless you're Harry, but Harry is traditionally quite stupid. So
Yeah. So we first encounter the island in Turncoat.
that sounds about right.
I
Yeah.
think with the Nagaloshi.
Is it the very first time? It is the very first time. Yeah.
I think the first time you encounter it is in Turncoat with the Nagaloshi. So the Nagaloshi is an Native American skin changer, essentially. At the time, probably the nastiest thing Harry Dresden has encountered. And I'm not going to go through the whole book. It kidnaps Thomas Wraith, Harry's half brother, and demands that Harry bring the Nagaloshi, warden of the White Council, who's being framed for murder. And the Nagaloshi is on Demonreach.
See, I'm now remembering it differently.
No, I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, because
I'm
Harry
wrong.
makes the exchange happen on the island. So the island is the book before it,
The island is the book
with
before
all the
it.
Denarians, the name of which now escapes me,
Yes, you're right.
where Michael gets seriously injured
You're right.
because they're hunting for a massive well of power, and that's how they discover the island, right?
Yes.
But then, yeah, your explanation is correct that he deals with the Nagloshi on the island. It's also where we learn quite a lot of interesting things, right? That
So Harry performs what's called a sanctum invocation at some point. Essentially binds himself to the island, which ordinarily is a thing that wizards can do. And in a place of magical power, I think you're meant to think it gives you something of an advantage, but not a complete game changer. Except that Demonreach is special and weird, and so
very.
And so I think that on Demonreach, the power up that you get by having performed that invocation is massive.
And this is something that I've always found a little bit disappointing, because I feel Butcher always has to explain that in so much, with a lot of effort, because we don't really ever see any other sanctum invocations up until that point.
No, I sort of assume that like Ebb has done one at his farm, Simon had done one at Archangel, stuff like that, but we don't know that.
Yeah, and Harry's not done one,
Harry's
like
never
his
done one
apartment, for
before.
example, is warded up to
I
the high heavens, but
I think there needs to be some sort of wellspring of magical energy that you can essentially bolt yourself onto.
possibly.
I think that would make sense to me. There has to essentially be some native or nature spirit that you can have a dust up with. Excuse me, in order to.
But this is a complication in my mind as well, because I mean Harry believes it was a sanctum invocation, but we've kind of just asserted that the island is in itself a spirit or something. I mean, it's a prison.
Yes. So the island has a native spirit creature who appears to live there, independent of Harry.
But I would go as far as saying the island is that.
So I was going to say that being, which Harry christens Alfred for hilarious, obvious reasons.
Fine writing that.
I think you're right that that Alfred is the living consciousness of the island. He is the island, ish.
Yeah, the island is Alfred, and Alfred is the island, and I think he can do a sanctum invocation on actual land, and there's some magic fuckery that happens there. Whereas, in my opinion, this was the island almost invoking Harry.
So there's probably something to that, because the island I think you're meant to come to the conclusion that the island was testing Harry to see whether or not he was worthy of becoming the warden. Now, coming back to Demonreach is a prison. Prisons need guards, which is Alfred. But Alfred is also the prison itself. And the chains or the bars or whatever, it's weird. But Alfred, because he's sort of kind of a bit fey, doesn't have will in the same way that a mortal does, I don't think. So the island needs someone to be making decisions. I don't think Alfred's capable of making decisions, exercising judgment. Someone else needs to do that, I think.
It does almost seem like that.
Alfred
yeah.
can carry out instructions and seems to be capable of some degree of reasoning, like some degree of subtlety in his programming, right? There's the ability to exercise some sort of judgment there, but someone needs to decide that a given evil creature needs locking up, and I don't think Alfred is capable of that.
But I think that's twofold, right? Someone needs to A, make that decision, and B, someone actually needs to get these potential prisoners to the island.
That's also true.
Because the island cannot leave itself.
Alfred is bound to Lake Michigan, essentially.
Yes, yeah. Which creates a whole different kind of weird experience when Alfred, through a statue, speaks to Harry, who's kind of dead at that point.
I'm just going to ignore Ghost Story, I think, for these purposes.
I like to think that that's Mab and Alfred speaking to Harry on the island, but he hears it in the graveyard. That's always been my explanation.
Probably the best way to think about it. It's
yeah, sorry. So you're asserting already that Alfred might be kind of fey.
Well, sorry, he's not actually fey. I don't think he's actually fey, but that kind of, he's not mortal, so he doesn't have whatever the Dresden verse considers to be free will, I think.
Yeah, okay, but that's a huge difference.
That's a huge difference, yes.
To fey. No, I thought you were alluding to that whole thing that I want to say Maeve hints at. Right, when Maeve and Lily sort of, because they try to fight Alfred in an attempt to unleash hell, one imagines.
Yes.
And I think they're kind of saying, oh, this spirit is part of the wild world, part of nature, and therefore can be influenced by the Fae. And I've always thought they were wrong about that.
I think they're wrong. I think this putting the end first, I think Alfred is essentially a construct made by Merlin.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
I think that is given power by the ley line that Demonreach creates, and then bound. That's my what is Alfred.
I mean, I think Alfred is all in Harry's head, to be honest. It's how he visualizes the.
Well, I think the spirit actually
locus
exists. I think the thing that shambles around Demonreach actually exists.
Oh, I don't. Because does anyone else ever see it?
Rashid gave it the limp.
Sure, but does anyone ever acknowledge the spirit standing there the way that Harry sees it?
Mab addresses the spirit directly.
Sure.
And Lily and Maeve.
Sure, but we never find out if they see it the same way Harry does, as a sort of. But
that's the same thing as saying, do they see blue the same way Harry does?
Well, almost certainly not, actually.
Well, that's my point though. Like Alfred, the name and the quips are probably Harry, but I think the physical construct exists.
Maybe
because I think Mab and Bob and Maeve and Lily and probably like Murph and people like that do
see that. No, that's again where I think you're not entirely right, because yeah, sure, all those Fae creatures that you mentioned, and like all the heavy hitters, they seem to see something, but it's never. Maybe I'm just remembering wrong, but I don't remember Murph or even
I don't remember the finale. I
Thomas.
don't remember the finale of Cold Days well enough.
Yeah.
But I know Bob interacts with it.
Yeah, but Bob especially, I
Bob's
think
weird,
it's much like
right?
Mab. They see things in a bit like like the Matrix on computer screens, right? They
Maybe.
sort of they interact with it very differently. So yeah, it's a complicated idea.
It is and it isn't. Like, maximum security prison for evil Gribblies in Lake Michigan that Harry has control over is probably enough for our purposes without diving into the metaphysics of it.
It's never enough for our purposes, but yes.
Except that I think they might become relevant towards the end of the discussion again.
Almost certainly.
Especially based on the way that you appear to be leaning.
Yeah, no, but I think, yes, in its most basic forms, it's some kind of prison for specifically supernatural creepy boys.
Apparently.
Well,
Although,
we're going to have to go to a word of Jim on this already. And you know how our feelings on Jim Butcher as the authority on things Jim Butcher.
Thomas is in...
Yes.
And he's sort of half supernatural.
But importantly, Thomas has free will. Demonstrably.
Thomas does have free will, that's true.
And Thomas is also not in there very long. And he's also kind of insane at the moment.
Well, we don't know how long he's going to be in there, but yeah,
No.
go on. He's not been.
But this is something that Jim said, is that the island cannot possibly contain something with free will indefinitely.
Okay, that is very interesting.
Yes. It really rather is, especially when we'll talk about, obviously, the Englishman. But that's kind of the point, right? Is that the warden, as far as we know, has to be someone with free will, aka a human.
Yes, all of the wardens that we know of, well, all two of them were humans. Well, they were both wizards. Well, no, three. They were all three of them were wizards.
Yeah, and obviously it was made by a wizard. I mean, with the help of none other than Odin himself, I guess. But they were all. Well, he was human.
Yeah, it was made by Merlin.
Presumably as a means of trying to control the supernatural.
I don't think we know why it exists.
It's very White Council, isn't it, to protect humanity from bigger dangers? I guess.
And I was going to suggest, because the White Council is secrets within secrets within secrets, the reason it's not on any map is because some of the White Council have stopped it being on maps.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. Yeah.
I think that because like the senior council know about Demonreach.
Yeah,
or some of them do. Rashid clearly understands it. I get the sense that Ebenezer understands it.
And Ebenezer understands it when he's not been on the senior council for that long.
But he was also the Blackstaff, so he was. I think he was also captain of wardens at one point. So he's like more senior than you would otherwise think he is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the weird ones out for me, I think, are Ancient Mai and Listens to Wind, because they're on the island and they never really talk about it, I don't think, or mention it that it feels weird. Or do they? And I'm just forgetting about that.
Well, Listens to Wind beats the ever-loving shit out of the Nagaloshi on the island.
On the island, yeah. I think he does comment on the nature of the island at one point.
I think he does, but that could just be his nature as a Native American medicine man, having that connection to the ground he's standing on. But they all do. I mean, I think Molly and Murph both comment on how unpleasant it feels to be on the island for any length of time. So someone like Listens to Wind is probably just more attuned to that. I don't know that Mai ever reacts to it.
Yeah, she's the one I'm wondering about. I don't think she ever really comments, but then she's not exactly Harry's biggest fan, so I don't see her just going into a 20-minute. Yeah, it's like, oh, this island is a bit weird, isn't it, Harry? That's probably not exactly what she's about. But yeah, so it's built by wizards to do wizard things.
I think you're built by Merlin to put the scariest elements of the supernatural to stop them eating humanity.
It's built by Merlin with the help of Odin, who is not...
Do we know that it was built, that was Odin helped?
I think it's pretty explicitly said, no?
Is it? I thought Odin taught Merlin magic, but when you see Merlin building it, it's only Merlin building it.
Oh, I thought that One Eye makes a comment about how he helped
He
the
might
prison specifically, but again,
he
maybe
might do, but it
okay,
would make
fine.
sense.
I mean, let's assume it was purely built by. Okay, well, my point was going to be that, you know, theory on top of theories is that we think that the Norse pantheon was the one in charge of holding the gates before Winter took over.
Yes, we do. Specifically the Aesir, but yes, we do.
Yeah, sure, specifically the Aesir. And to me, it sort of felt like almost part of the natural order of things, therefore, to have the people handing over the reins also helping whatever the flavor of the month is in terms of mortal kind. Or maybe not even so much that, but just that Odin thought, yeah, we need something to help the wizards.
Maybe. But I suspect that if that were the case, what Odin would have done, and maybe this isn't me arguing with you, but what Odin would have done is helped Merlin learn how to do it, but Merlin would have built it himself.
Yeah, it's just the fact that it's sort of made throughout time. I just don't think Merlin's got the skills.
That's a very Odin trait, but I think the difference is I think Merlin probably does the original Merlin, not Arthur Langtry, might well have been that powerful because he was taught directly by Odin, and if some of the more esoteric Arthurian legends are to be believed, he's a scion. He's not... Merlin himself is not purely mortal.
Yes.
So it's entirely possible that as the quote-unquote first wizard, he can do things that, or could do things that other wizards just never could. And we know that Merlin himself wrote the laws of magic, which implies that he was not bound by them. So the idea of him swimming against the currents of time to build a prison that he can then give to the White Council for them to protect themselves makes sense to me.
Well, I guess he does all that, and then in order to make sure no one can undo his work, I guess says, we should never mess with time.
Yeah, I broke all of the laws in order to put in place structures to stop another me happening.
Because you think he killed someone as well for it, using magic?
Not specifically for the prison, but I reckon Merlin probably committed the odd bit of magical murder.
Fair enough. Okay. Now, actually, this is interesting, right? Because we can go back all the way to our very first episode, way back when we were young and full of dreams and hopes.
I still had hair.
Let's not talk about that. But we did a ranking of top 10 Dresden Files characters in terms of strength.
We did.
And I believe we both had Alfred on the list somewhere, or at least I did.
We did. If you give me 1 second, I can find the lists and tell you where they were.
Because I will definitely want to change my opinion on that. In that I do believe Alfred is the single most powerful supernatural entity that exists.
So you had him at 7.
Yeah.
I didn't have him.
You didn't have him, no. He was one of your honourable mentions, I think.
I think he was one of my honourable mentions. You had him at 7, so above Outsiders, Odin and Leah.
Yeah.
Below queens, gods, angels, basically, and Ferrovax.
Yeah, and I've had some time to reflect on this, and I actually think he's tough because he's obviously got a lot of constraints and restrictions.
So I remember us having this conversation. I think the reason Alfred wasn't on my list was how narrow his constraints are. if you can
Yeah.
get within those constraints, I think I agree with you. But
But I will now go
you also
further and say,
you also
right?
require the willpower of the warden in order to
Yes.
switch on Alfred, which I think
Yeah.
is a weakness.
Oh no, I think it's a strength. It's a strength because I remember discussing that Uriel, for example, right, immensely powerful, but is so unbelievably restrained that his power just doesn't work except in very niche circumstances. I think Alfred can lock up Uriel. I think Alfred can lock up the White God if the Warden chooses to do so.
I disagree, but not. Sorry. I think I agree. I don't think it's ever practically possible because in order to lock up Uriel, you've got to contain Uriel within a circle. And that's the bit of binding Ethnu that we know is difficult when we see Harry do it.
Sure.
So trying to get the Warden to throw their willpower again.
That's actually kind of a mindfuck, isn't it? Because Uriel can't act against free will, and if it's Harry's free will to lock him in a circle, that breaks something fundamental.
Yeah, that's true, and maybe that is a way
Like a
around
weird
it.
loophole.
If Uriel, but Uriel says to Harry when Harry summons him, "It's a very nice circle that you've got here." He essentially says, "It's a nice circle that you've got here, Shame, if something were to happen to it." I
Yeah,
think the
and
exact
Mab
point is,
makes
you can't hold me.
yeah, Mab makes similar complaints. No, and I agree with you. That's going to probably be the weak link, right? But I think once the
Well,
binding has happened,
it nearly snaps Harry's brain trying to lock up Ethne
yeah.
using the Spear of Destiny.
But that's the role of the Warden. But I think once it's in, nothing is going to break out.
I think that's true. Other than, to Jim's point, something with free will,
Other than something free will.
eventually.
But
Which is really
Uriel, I think, would
interesting.
be locked in forever.
I think that's probably true. I think
All everything we've heard of that is ostensibly godly, I suppose.
well, that comes on to the sort of what's in Demonreach. So lots of nasty stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the lowest of the low, the minimum security element of Demonreach is 7 Nagaloshi?
6 or 7, yeah.
6 or 7
like a
Nagaloshi.
scary number.
Yes, like 1 Nagaloshi in Turncoat is pound for pound still, other than pre-Battleground, probably the scariest thing Harry fights. Like, it, thinking back on it, still like makes his brain gibber inside, kind of thing.
No. That's a Harry thing rather than an actual thing.
No, I think it's an actual thing. The implication is that Donald Morgan nuked one and it got better. Like, these things are stupid strong.
Yeah, but listens to Wind 1v1s when he's just a wizard.
No, but Listens to Win says afterwards that he didn't really win. It's a predator and he just made it too costly for it.
Yeah.
So
true, but he still beat it in a fight.
He still beat it in a fight, and yeah, okay. Listens to Wind is pretty great, and maybe they're not that scary, but they're still phenomenally scary, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking in terms of locking one up, I think it just can't really be done with normal conventional means.
Well, because it has free will, because it breaks a circle. Jim doesn't know what he's writing about.
That is always the concern.
That
is always a concern. But the concept of free will is we've tried to get to the bottom of this before, right?
Yeah,
and failed.
We're going to need to think about that quite hard. But the Nagaloshi in Turncoat breaks a circle, which means it has free will, because it's only will that can break a circle. So that means that
will, but not free will.
It's the same thing.
Not really, because as you mentioned before, Uriel could easily break a circle using his will. He doesn't have free will. The mother's
true, but it's
not contained by circles.
It's different. There's a distinction between breaking out of a circle and breaking a circle by physical means, like the Nagloshi does. So if Harry throws a stone over
Oh
a
yeah.
circle, it breaks the strongest circle known to man.
But does the Nagloshi do it physically?
It scratches the line.
Oh well, then you're just talking shit, aren't you? Anything can do that.
No, they can't.
Anything can do that.
No, they can't. That's not how it works.
Absolutely. You just, smudge it a bit. Usually not when you're on the inside.
The point is, if you're on the inside of a circle, you can't smudge a circle unless you are you're right. It's probably more complicated, but the implication has always been unless you were essentially possessed of mortal free will. That's why when Harry summons Molly in a circle in peace talks, he's concerned that she can't just walk out of the circle because it hadn't been a circle designed to contain a mortal.
Yeah.
So she should be able to just walk out of it, and she can't. Or at least says that she doesn't. She'd rather he just let her out. Anyway, that's
so many layers to this onion of wisdom that we're going through. But yeah, so the Nagloshi are minimum security prisoners. I think that's a very key point.
Yes, I mean, whatever their power level, like on our top 10 list, the fact that they get minimum security is very, very scary.
It's how Harry rationalizes the prison to himself as well, isn't it? Because I think he's supremely shocked.
Yes, I think that hammers home for him how scary the prison is.
And so, for example, I would quite like to know where Ethnu ends up, what level of security she ends up in, because I guess we don't know that yet.
Well, Thomas probably has just created a new level of minimum security, of not really being in prison, just being put in stasis.
Yeah, but he's there not so much to be locked up, other than he's more. It's like a fancy sick bay, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
The Nagloshi, so obviously now contains gods, and I don't know about how what your feelings are on this, but to me, the evil, nasty aura that drives away so many people that the island exudes is a manifestation of just how much evil is locked up there, right?
Yes, definitely. I think that's almost confirmed. I think the ley line, I think, is meant to be formed by that sheer weight of nasties crammed into. I sort of picture it as they all occupy the same square meter of space time. They're just like folded really, really small on top of each other.
Yeah, well,
probably not actually, but
I feel that breaks so many laws of physics that I can't even quite formulate a response to that. But I kind of know what you're getting at.
Yeah.
But I mean, when Lily and Maeve attack Demonreach, they have to do it through time and space, essentially, because it's just so formidably built that a single attack on a single day is just not going to.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's built at multiple points in time, like simultaneously being built at 5 different points of space time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so maybe this then brings us up to the actual question at hand. At least I think in my head it does, because I very much have theories regarding who the person is and why that's relevant. So deeper in the dungeons, Harry meets a bunch of stuff, and what always really struck me is that most of them are kind of just like trying to seduce him, trying to be let out.
I've got some of the quotes here from that provision. So you have such wonderful things as, "Let me fulfill your every desire. One day I will be free and suck the marrow from your bones."
Okay, so Slanesh and Corner there.
"Bow down in fear and horror before me. Go to sleep, sleep and let me inside you," which, ugh.
Well, Slanesh is there twice.
Blood, pain, death, blood, flesh, blood, pain, death. Corn's there twice. And then my personal favourite, Blargle Slorg Noth Hargle Fagan, which I think means that Thulu's trapped there. Or Nurgle.
Oh wow, really, really crossing streams here.
We're told that there's a fairly small mound whose occupant. So the point is they can communicate psychically with Harry if he's nearby and focusing on them. So you have a small mound whose occupants sent him a mental picture that kept him up for 2 nights. And then there's one that's weird.
Yeah.
So as I walked by, the mound's occupant projected a mental sigh and an unmistakable image of a man rolling his eyes. Ah, a new one. I eyed the mound by the size of a coffin and said, "What's your problem?" You, obviously. Do you even know what the word stasis means? Means nothing is happening. You standing here, walking by, talking to me, for God's sake, buggers that up entirely, the way you novices always do. What was the phrase? Ah, yes. Piss off. To date, every single prisoner who had tried to communicate with me had been pretty obviously playing to get out or else howling nuts. This guy just sounded British. Did you hear me, Warden? Piss off. Who are you? I asked instead. There was a long moment of silence, and then a thought filled with terrible weariness and purely emotional anguish, like something I'd experienced only at the very lowest moments of my life, flowed into me. But for this being, such pain wasn't a low point, it was a constant state. Someone who needs to be here, go away, boy. That's the quote. And that is the British man or the English man of Reddit fame.
Indeed. Many threads on this.
So many threads that you can unpick, and we're not going to get through all of them. But everyone who's read Skin Game, which is that's the book in which that exchange happens, has a theory on who the Englishman is. I have a few.
Yeah, of course you do.
What have you got? You got a couple of theories? Have you got just one?
Well, I have the truth.
You got the truth. Okay. Yeah. Do you want to tell us who it is?
It's the Merlin, as in the OG Merlin, the designer, architect, supreme of the prison.
Okay.
And I know that will resonate well with many Reddit users because that's always one of the first ones that is suggested and then gets shot down by about 1,000 people.
It gets shot down by a lot of people.
But usually gets shot down by people who say, Word of Jim says it isn't,
yes.
And they're just wrong.
Actually, so they're wrong because for several reasons. Chief among them being, that's not what the Word of Jim says.
No.
The Word of Jim says something along the lines of, if Merlin were speaking today, he'd probably be speaking with an ancient an ancient Britain accent, because that was the time that he grew up in. So you wouldn't be able to understand him. He certainly wouldn't sound quite British.
Yes,
but
if he speaks, yes.
One, if he speaks, but also we do know that the OG Merlin was a time traveller.
Yes.
So, he might have just, I don't know, time travelled to 18th century England, lived there for a bit, and decided, I quite like that accent.
I don't like that as an argument. The reason I think he sounds the way he sounds is because fundamentally this conversation is happening in Dresden's head.
I think that's a very good counter argument as well.
And Bob is I think translating quite a lot of it, isn't he?
I don't think so. I think
certainly riding along, I believe.
No,
or isn't he?
Bonnie is.
No, Bonnie's not born. Yeah, well, Bonnie's in his
Bonnie's
head.
in his head.
Yeah. Actually, no. Bob will be with Butters at that point.
Bob is with Butters in Skin Game. Bob is with Butters.
Oh yeah, Bob is the one who gives him the history of Demonreach, right? When he translates for Alfred. Yeah, that's what he does.
Yeah,
I'm getting my my story's mixed up. But no, so I think he sounds British because that's just how
Oh yeah,
Harry's
because
brain
Doesn't Bob cast Alec Guinness as OG Merlin,
Yes.
which is excellent. But no, you're right. So I think the fact that it's happening in Harry's head means that if some part of Harry's subconscious is aware that this is the OG Merlin, that will create an association in Harry's brain with the current Merlin, Arthur Langtry, who is English.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a posh voice, one of like old establishment. I can see it. I can see why. I can make the fact that the person in question has a British accent fit. That's not the problem, I don't think.
Yeah. Okay. So before I explain to you why this is the correct identity of the prisoner, what are some of your theories as to who is in there?
So my favorite.
So presumably not the Merlin.
I don't think
Or
it's
Merlin.
Merlin. I don't think it's OG Merlin. I think there's a small chance it could be Arthur.
Arthur Langtry.
No,
Or Arthur the
King.
king.
Arthur King. I think there's a better chance that it's King Arthur than that it's Langtry than that it's Merlin.
Okay, interesting. So very wrong, but I've seen that one before.
I have a little pet favorite theory that it's Chandler.
Oh yes, of course.
I quite like that one. I don't think it is, but I think it's quite funny it would be quite funny for it to be Chandler.
I mean, just to orient our listeners here, the original thing we had written in our list of ideas was who is the Englishman on Demonreach and why is it Chandler?
Yeah, I don't actually think it's Chandler. I just think it would be quite funny if it was Chandler.
We should explore that a little bit because that could be quite funny and yeah, because he's such a minor, pointless character otherwise.
And then I think my final one is not. Well, actually, it could be Kemmler.
Yeah.
Or it's some person that we don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously an appealing / interesting idea, but
it's someone who
too easy.
It's essentially a. That's not quite what I mean. At the moment, Jim doesn't know who it is because it's put there so that he can use it if he needs it. If he needs to be able to pull Merlin out his ass, he's done it. If he needs to be able to pull Arthur out his ass, he's done it. Or Chandler, or whoever it might be. If for some inexplicable reason he needs Bram Stoker, it's him.
Yeah. Or what I suspect is almost more likely we'll just never get any resolution.
Or we'll just never get it. Or my last guess is Oberon.
Oberon.
King of the Summer Fairies.
King of the Summer Fairies. I mean, no.
I don't know, but he's a big.
Go away, William Shakespeare.
Oberon is a big hole in the Fey mythology of Dresden, of the Dresden verse. I think
because it works differently to I think.
I think that's right. I think he's probably the Earl King. The Earl King is probably Oberon.
Yeah, except that the Earl King's very much more aligned with the Winter Court.
Or there is a summer. Maybe there's a summer Earl King.
Yeah, like a sort of king of the Wild Fae who are more.
Yeah, the King of the Wild Hunt.
Jovial.
But the Earl King is the Wild Hunt. Anyway.
Yeah. So Oberon's an interesting one. Unknown's obviously a boring one to discuss because, as you say, that's a perfectly valid way of writing it. Would just be quite disappointing.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and make the case that it's some bloke that we'll never find out. That's boring.
Yeah.
Even though I think you're right. I think that is actually the most likely.
So I think between Kemmler, King Arthur, and my idea of Merlin, the concept of stasis is quite important.
Okay.
Right, because King Arthur is dead, although the legends say, he's sort of slumbering, isn't he?
Yeah, he
In
sleeps
Avalon.
beneath the hill.
Yeah. Kemmler is capital D dead, according to Word of Jim, so he probably is very much alive.
Yeah, definitely still alive.
And for me, the idea of the stasis is important. If it's Merlin,
Mm-hmm.
because it suggests he's currently sort of existing outside the concept of time,
Yes.
and has maybe locked himself out of time for reasons.
I can see that essentially going because even Merlin would eventually have died of old age. So
Yes, exactly.
rather than die of old age, he sort of decided to go and sleep in stasis until such time as a warden works out who he is and decides he needs him. I can see that. Or
Yeah,
she.
so that's why I think the concept of stasis could apply to those three characters. For me, the two things that are crucial here is I need to be here, which to me says a few things.
Yeah.
The obvious being is that this is a person who needs to be in this place. Now you can interpret that either as
Someone who
the way that
deserves to be here.
yeah, which I'm sure is how you would interpret it, or the way I might interpret it is the sort of, if I am not here, this place no longer functions.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't contemplated that. Is essentially it's running off.
Yeah, off of that person. Yeah.
Wait. So you know how a wizard's death curse is essentially more powerful.
Yep.
What if I still don't like it being Merlin, but I can make it fit. What if Demonreach, the final, like the capstone of Demonreach, was provided by Merlin's death curse, but in the moment of death, Merlin was put himself into stasis so that he didn't die, so that death curse is like continually renewing itself to hold the whole thing together.
Yeah,
Like a frozen moment.
because ultimately the death curse is essentially just the wizard expelling all magical power from his own internal source, right?
Essentially, yeah.
It kills the body, but their spirits do whatever their spirits do, and it's not unreasonable or unfeasible, rather. It might be very unreasonable, but it's not unfeasible that entity is the spirit that lingered on post curse.
Yes, that could be Merlin's quote unquote soul,
Yeah,
or whoever's soul.
and that's why it's interesting to me is because that you interpreted that I need to be here as a I am repenting almost situation, and I deserve to be here. Whereas for me, it always rung as a sort of.
But that's so for me. It's the line that comes before about the weight of sorrow. So I struggle with why are you here? I need to be here and feeling sorrowful. That feels like regret to me.
But see, the way that I will spin this, and make no mistake, I am spinning this to fit my theory,
Of course.
is again Merlin time travels. So Merlin was probably at the end of time, or at least at the end of the universe, as humanity may have experienced it, and realizes that shit goes very badly wrong, and he's unable to stop it, and so he feels remorseful. But in some sort of last desperate act to maybe change that timeline, he creates Demonreach. Just throwing that out there.
That feels like more of a stretch.
It does a bit.
How do you align this with any of the theories that Harry is the OG Merlin?
Well, that's just bullshit.
The circular, and then time is a flat circle or something.
No, let me retract that. He's a descendant of OG Merlin. That brings me on to my third reason why I think that this might be Merlin, and it's because he says, "Go away, boy," which is so Ebenezer McCoy.
It is very Ebenezer.
And Ebenezer McCoy has Merlin's old diaries.
I was going to say,
so I've always assumed that there was a relation.
Yeah, predilection to calling people boy.
Exactly. It's just stayed in that family for generations.
Maybe.
So
I don't think that Ebenezer and Dresden are linear descendants of Merlin. I think they're master and apprentice descendants of Merlin.
Yeah, true. But I think that for them, that's one and the same thing. I think that's going to be the ultimate twist.
I hate that. I think you're probably right. I think you are actually probably right, but I hate that as a twist. I don't like I don't like chosen one narratives. Or
No, I can see that. I can see that.
it devalues so much if actually at the end Harry is the one true savior rather than the guy who kept deciding to get up. In my
That's
view,
not necessarily mutually exclusive.
it's not, but it's not completely unrelated to this episode. But I want Harry's choices to matter more than who his great 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 grandfather was.
Well, yes, quite.
Or whatever. Right.
But if Harry's OG Merlin, he could have been his own creator.
Yes, there's something very unpleasant if Harry is OG Merlin.
Very, very unpleasant.
I don't think it's true. I think that's a stupid way to go.
But there can be so many parallels, right? Because the other theory that we have is that Merlin and Mab were a thing.
That's my theory. Yeah,
and that Mab and Harry have also slept together.
Merlin. Sorry, Mab is Nimue is my theory, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's. Yeah, so there's an Arthurian and twang to that. So I think we'll get on to King Arthur shortly. But Merlin, it just makes the most sense to me insofar if this has to make any sense. And I just like it, and also like just really pissing all those people off who are like, oh, but Jim said it isn't. Because Jim says a lot of shit.
Jim says a lot of shit, and if you're going to say Jim has said that it's not Merlin, go and read what the actual word of Jim says, because he doesn't say no. He says he gives reasons why it could not be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I quite like it. But so King Arthur.
Right. So
explain it to me.
So I like I like a lot of what you said about how it's all the conversation is happening in Harry's head. So how the voice comes across is sort of irrelevant. I think that I have some narrative issues with it being Merlin. It feels weird if it's Merlin. But there is a character in Arthurian legend who sleeps beneath the hill until needed. And it's Arthur. That is what Arthur... That's how Arthur's tale ends. He's taken to Avalon, which is an island, to sleep until the people of Britain need him beneath the hill. And it's actually a trait that you see in a lot of other mythologies as well. So David, the king of Israel, I think is thought to sleep beneath the hill. Finn McCall of Irish myth sleeps under the hills. So it's a narrative line that you can see running through of it being some.
And there is a literal hill, right? I think
there is a hill, like Demonreach is a hill.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not Arthur, maybe it's David, or maybe it's Finn McCall, or someone
another random a rogue one I want to throw at you. Then there's Jesus Christ. Tough to fit, but ultimately, like, we've recovered some artifacts that are important to his story.
Christ slept beneath the hill, but then awoke and rose and ascended.
But the same's true of Arthur. Why is he locked up?
So because he's not. He's in stasis. He's sitting out of time. To your Merlin point.
Yeah, but that could equally be true of Jesus then.
But no, because as I said, we know the Bible tells us that Jesus ascended to the heavens. It doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That doesn't really work the same way.
It doesn't work the same way. I can see why you say it, but
The allegory's there anyway.
the allegory is there, but that's because there is a monomyth component that runs through a lot of religious and mythological text.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of reasons why it could be Arthur. Arthur's sword is in the books.
Yes.
Amarachius is just Excalibur. It's not even been reforged. It is just Excalibur.
Yes.
Arthur was a Knight of the Cross. We assume if he wielded one of the blades, and I think having Merlin. If we assume that the Englishman or the British man is going to get up at some point, which is the only reason this conversation makes sense, is if at some point who that person is becomes relevant because Harry can release them.
Yeah.
If it's Merlin, everything sort of becomes too easy. I mean, it doesn't, because Merlin, he doesn't just fix everything, but getting another top-tier wizard who will put the entirety of the senior council to shame is a bit too much like giving Harry a let's fix things button, whereas giving him Arthur, I think, is slightly different.
Oh, come on. King Arthur wielding Amarachius?
Yeah, but for all his...
I guess we are short a Knight of the Cross, aren't
We
we?
are short a Knight of the Cross, but for all his greatness, we're short a wielder of Amarachius. But for all Arthur's sort of mythological greatness, he's still just a man. He's not a wizard.
Yeah, and that's...
But then you've got the question of how...
Why, yeah, why, like, then why? Why is that relevant? Why have this man? What would the people need him for?
Some sort of last battle? I don't know. I don't know why it would be... I don't know why he would fit in the story, but I prefer that idea to it being Merlin, just because I don't like the idea of meeting OG Merlin.
Yeah, for the reasons you've discussed. My counter to that is that I think so much of Merlin's history is tied up with the Queens of Faerie.
True.
And I think the only way we would see Merlin come back is for him to have some sort of lover's tiff.
Unfinished business with Mab and Titania. Yeah.
A popular theory is that Mab will die and that would kickstart the bat.
Yes.
Right? So
that's true.
And if anyone's going to kill Mab, it being Merlin, if she is Nimue, would be almost more poetic than I would give Jim Butcher credit for.
Yes. That's true, and you can make the case. I think I'm right in saying that Nimue eventually traps Merlin in a hill full of crystals, which is just Demonreach.
Which is just Demonreach.
So if Mab is Nimue, well, you can do your theory this way. Mab is Nimue, and at one point was the first warden. Say, after Merlin built it, then Mab could have trapped Merlin in his own prison.
No, he can't have. Or she can't have. Because Merlin is immortal. Merlin has...
Yes, but...
tremendous amounts of free will.
But
and I do, even though, I mean, this is Jim saying, I do sort of think he's right. That I think you can't lock someone with free will in there.
But he says you can't do that indefinitely, which implies that the person with free will would want to have to get out. And it might be that Merlin doesn't want out.
Yeah, no, but this is why I think I'll slightly amend your theory. And I think that Nimue and Merlin concoct this plan together.
To lock him up.
Yeah, because Mab is quite sad, right? When she remembers her own past. Like something happened that she feels saddened by it.
You think that... I could see that.
He's Calador Dragon Tamer. Is it Dragon Tamer?
Yeah,
the guy who's in the middle of the vortex.
Yeah, the guy holding it all together.
Yeah, I think that's Merlin, and I think Nimue may have put him there. I like your addition to that. I think Nimue /Mab has put him there. with his permission, obviously, because
which does, and if he's there with his own permission, then it does imply that at any point he can choose to leave. But in so doing, he probably brings the whole prison down.
Exactly. So if he does that, there must be a very good reason for it.
Yeah, the prison's failing anyway.
Yeah, and I think Mirror Mirror will probably deal with something like this, because if that really introduces multiverses and things like that, which people have been saying it might,
And
then
evil Harry, we assume.
Yeah, that'll be a real.
I want to know what causes evil Harry.
Just a parallel version of him.
But the point is, there's a specific choice he makes differently that changes his entire outlook. I want to know what that choice is. That's Jim's point. It's like you can pinpoint when evil Harry happens, and it's a specific choice that he makes.
Yeah. Okay. Perhaps. But I'm looking forward to that, and I hope it talks a little bit about what Demonreach is all about.
I think
but then maybe to end, why don't you give us your ideas, misguided though they are, about Chandler?
That's why it's Chandler. So
I love how we've essentially ignored Kemmler, and I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually Kemmler, because I don't think that Kemmler would express regret.
He's just too weird, I think.
But I think it's quite neat, because we know that Kemmler was a warden, so I think it's quite neat that he's been trapped in there on his own. The problem is it doesn't work, because the voice says something like young wardens are always a problem, or new wardens are always a problem, or something, and Kemmler was there's only been one warden between Kemmler and Harry, so that doesn't work. But I've seen it suggested. Chandler. So Chandler, we know, was thrown through a portal by Dracul in Battlegrounds. And I quite like the theory that was a portal backwards in time. So Chandler was essentially thrown back in time to the beginning of creation, or whenever it might have been, by Dracul, and somehow meets up with Merlin, explains to Merlin what happened, and Merlin goes, "Oh, I've got a solution. I'll chuck you in stasis for 2,000 years. And then you can wake up in your own time." It's just that. That's the theory. It's not particularly compelling. I just think it's quite fun.
So you're saying he needs to be here up until a few years later when Battleground happens?
Yeah, but he doesn't know that Harry's the warden, because he's seen so many wardens, and he's just fed up of them that he doesn't take the time to realise that this warden is Harry. Or he needs to wait for Battleground to happen so that Harry thinks he's dead, so that he can get Harry to let him out, so that there aren't two Chandlers and you don't get a paradox.
Yeah, he might need Ethnew to be imprisoned, and then realise that.
Yeah, it might be that. He might just need. There might be some paradox that means that there can't be two Chandlers. There might be one of the rules of time, because we don't know how time travel works in the Dresden verse. So it might just be that he can't let on who he is, because if Harry, that's the other thing. If he explained who he was to Harry and said this happens to Chandler, then Harry would have known, which would have changed the event, which means it never happens, which breaks the universe.
Yes.
So that could be the other way of doing it.
Usual time travel shenanigans.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
It's not a very good theory. The theory that Dracul that Chandler is a Dracul spy is, I think, a better Chandler theory.
Yes, and that's why he was saved.
Yes, he wasn't killed. He was saved. Yeah. He was flung across space into Europe or wherever by Dracul. That's a better theory.
Why Dracul would even bother with spies in the White Council is beyond me.
Yeah, but maybe he just did. But
Chandler is pretty. He's always been pretty clued in, right? Because he was guard duty at headquarters for a while.
Yeah.
He was an interesting character.
I think he's meant to be something of an interest in time magic.
Yeah, and he's certainly more fleshed out than Yoshimo or Wild Bill were.
That's true.
In terms of his own dialogue, at least.
That's true.
So yeah, that's not a bad one. I think I agree with you ultimately that Chandler is probably reserved for something else.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually him. But I think
it's a shame. I really thought we'd have some more outrageous suggestions of who the prisoner in Demonreach could be. We're just too wise nowadays, aren't we?
I've got a really bad one.
Oh, go on then.
I've got a really bad one. It could be one of the archangels.
No, they speak with bullshittery in their voices, don't they?
I was going to say it could be the Archangel Michael, but it couldn't be because I had a theory where it could be the Archangel Michael, and he was trapped there for his failure to slay Satan, essentially. So that's his sorrow, and it's a self-imposed exile, essentially, because he failed. But that doesn't work because he hands Sanya Esperakis.
Well, exactly. Yeah, Michael. He's very much mentioned, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think Michael, Gabriel, and Doriel all make appearances, don't they? So
I think we would know if one of the archangels was trapped.
Here's a weird twist for you, maybe.
There's something there, though. Yeah. Okay.
A penance story. If we're going to talk about time travel, perhaps Nicodemus.
Ooh.
English accent.
Does Nicodemus have an English accent?
I
He predates England by about 1,000 years.
He does, no, but I in my head he always spoke with like a posh British accent.
I always pictured him as almost completely accentless, like a real mid-Atlantic.
Perhaps.
Accent.
I mean, because he does predate all that. But that could be in terms of penance. I mean, who better than Nicodemus Arcleon?
But how does he get there? Why is he there?
After the final battle, he just says, you know.
But Harry's spoken to him, so it doesn't work. Time travel, unless you do time travel. And the moment you do time travel,
no, it doesn't work. It doesn't really work.
What about Loki?
Yeah, he's another character that has previously been locked up, I think, right?
He's been, he's chained beneath the serpent, for killing Balder.
But he would never see himself as needing to be locked up. Is a difference with
that's
Loki.
true.
It's the fact that it's stasis and that this character talks about stasis.
Who across mythology sets themselves a task and then fails? That's sort of who we're looking for.
Judas.
Judas
didn't fail, but Judas would be remorseful.
Judas
he does kill himself, though.
Yeah, but Judas Iscariot could be a great show. Except, as you say, he kills himself.
In terms of...
And we know he does actually kill himself because Nicodemus is wearing the...
Yeah, no, he very much kills himself. I don't think you can get around it.
Someone like Hercules could work.
Yeah, because there's a fundamental aura of this just being a guy as well, right? And not something overtly godly like, say, a Zeus.
Yeah. I can see someone because Hercules slays his wife and children while in the throes of a madness.
Sure, but that's what the trials are for.
But he still killed his wife and children, and sure, the trials might get him forgiveness in the sight of God, sight of the gods. But like, he still killed his wife and children. He's still going to be remorseful for that fact. So it might be that he does the trials and then thinks, you know what, I don't deserve to be redeemed.
Yeah.
Hard to see why he would sound British, though.
Yeah, that's it. But there's a lot of reasons why it could sound British, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why he could sound British.
Because Jim Butcher's an American, so anyone who speaks with a British voice is probably some sort of super villain. Which, if you see Hercules as a villainous character, perhaps that's why he comes across as British in Harry's head.
Maybe he sees himself as villainous. He sees himself as villainous, so the projection that he puts in Harry's brain is one of villainy, so Harry's brain gives it a James Bond supervillain secret accent. It's Hercules.
Wow, okay, you said it with such finality.
Well, we've been going for so long, I think we just need to wrap up. And so
Yeah,
I'm having the last word and
no,
declaring.
my final
Hercules.
one is Justin Demorne, and now with that we can wrap up.
Okay, and tinfoil next week.
Well,
There's
we
no
don't
point
see
in it.
Justin die, so
We don't see Justin die, but the timeline doesn't work
why not?
because Justin Dumorne dies 10 years before the events of Stormfront. Say
Uh-huh.
there's
Yeah,
not.
but there's no reason to suggest that the minute you're put in Demonreach, you don't, for some reason, exist across time, so you know all the wardens.
That I think is probably the counter argument is that
Yeah.
because of where Demonreach exists, because of the fact that Demonreach exists across time, you sort of, depending on the level of stasis that you're in, you can also exist at multiple points in time.
Exactly. Or you're just really confused.
We're just really, really confused.
And with that,
I hate any Justin Dumorne theory that isn't he's just dead.
yeah, me too. But he doesn't. We don't see him die, which always worries me.
No, that is a problem. You don't die. You don't see him die, but you do see a body.
Do you see
Bob says they only ever recovered one body. I think.
Yeah, but that could be anyone.
It could just be one of the firefighters.
Exactly. And with that, I think we call it there.
Yeah, I think so.
So thanks so much for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know. Rate the podcast and leave us a comment or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com. Tweet us at @zeroexpertise. Check out our website, expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us on our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. And if you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Now, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time, where we think this time we can finally get ourselves cancelled.
Yay.
We'll be discussing the current trend in tabletop role-playing games, pushing to allow players to make unrestricted and consequence-free choices, and why that is ruining everything. Join us then for more nonsense.